far as actual details on what the project would be. You know, one is, I think, an ethanol type development plan. It utilizes different ag waste and creates an ethanol supply, I believe is what it is. And then there was also one, like a paper mill that was looking for a home that didn't necessarily identify a specific project that was presented yet.
Yeah.
So those are the industry.
Right.
That's ones we've heard of in the last couple of years, but who knows, right? If you have
But an industry like that, if they really wanted to, I mean, they can ask and
Yeah, there would be,
use surface, they could use a surface water
yeah, like
in
other,
the future.
if
should-
they will, their own water for
Yeah,
system. or
like any
something.
development project related to their environmental review process, that's come up with a balanced water supply. They could work to.
We're just
develop
gonna
that.
try to protect the.
GSA sustainability,
Yeah.
essentially,
I
because,
said, we won't really even know what it might be until they
Right.
fill out the application. And then, in the application, one of the things is, you know, a reasonable estimate of how much water they're gonna use.
That's cause that's what I was looking at, is the newer expanded groundwater use, right? So an
Right.
expansion, it's like, you know, right now when we farm, we, I think, use a calculation of 3 feet an acre. You know, just kind of as a reasonable calculation that we broadcast. So you just don't know what an intensive use, if it's a building that's sitting on 2 or 3 acres or something, or manufacturing, and they're using 28 feet, and you know, that's obviously a lot greater, non-ag. But like, I'm trying to come up with my mind a prediction of what somebody would wanna do.
right, well, like Tommy mentioned, I mean, the district has recently been approached by people, you know, looking to put these things in, and then trying to figure out how it relates to Sigma and the MID GSA, and right now, we really don't have a nexus or a way, you know, I mean, we have the GSA, and, you know, we're currently, you know, very close to sustainability, if not sustainable, you know, as we sit today, and so, you know, how do we then work with these entities or groups to make sure that we maintain sustainability? So, this process would allow us to do that. And then the other thing I didn't mention is we are going to be, once the policy is adopted by the board, we would obviously communicate this over to Madera County, to both their planning departments and their water and natural resources departments, so that they would be aware. So as people are, you know, obtaining permits through the county and such, because that would really be where they go to for these permits, they would be aware of this, and if they're in the MID GSA, they could also, you know, make them aware of this.
So at the time of pulling a permit for a new well, then they would also have to check?
No, not necessarily a new well. So like for a plant, like if you're gonna put in a new like industrial facility or something like that, you would have to go through Madera County planning to get those approvals. It would probably be in that process more so, because right now a well permit is really more like environmental health and, right, and such. It's not necessarily the amount of water you're using.
Conceivably, it could involve the city of Madera, really, because it could be within the city of Madera and the MID.
No, because it's only within the MID GSA. So this is
Oh,
specific
so
to the
it
MID
excludes
GSA.
property, okay.
Excludes the city
So
of
it'd be the non-city portion of our
Just the
GSA.
areas
that
where we're
and Madera
managing.
Water District.
And Madera
That's
Water
what it's
District.
named, yeah. Because we don't want, we don't want to start getting in, you know, the city's business and everything else, particularly as it relates to groundwater, because we have formed individual GSAs.
So we're gonna look that the other GSAs adopt something similar, or
Well, everybody's gonna be managing
their own?
what they're doing differently, yeah, so.
So one of these unique things with this policy is we're managing as a district as a whole. We're not putting restrictions on individual parcels related to their use. This would allow us to, if the high groundwater use comes in, we have a way to control that, make sure it's not gonna impact the entirety of our GSA.
Cumulative use.
Exactly.
Otherwise, you could potentially have a whole bunch of industry come up to MID and come into our GSA because we don't have a by parcel limitation imposed.
Do we have an application already?
Yeah, so in here it describes that, what would be required of the application, and we do have a draft application, which just essentially includes all of this, the same,
the
same
numbers,
6 bullet
letters.
points, yeah. So they need to provide a narrative, they need to provide a reasonable estimate based on a licensed engineer's report of the amount of water needed for the use, whether the person or entity has any legal rights to water from an entity, you know, if they brought in water from an outside source or something like that and chose to wheel it through a system. All permits or authorizations necessary to demonstrate the applicant's use is lawful, including any environmental documents and permits required, any other information that they believe may be relevant, and any other information requested by the GSA. Yeah, I mean,
I think
you
it's
guys
some,
have-
I think
yeah.
it's something we need, let's say some fictitious, business, I'll just pick one. Let's say William Nimoy, paper manufacturing came into town. And they're gonna use theoretically a bunch of water. They need to fill out an application so we can make a determination
Yep.
of how it's gonna affect everybody else in the GSA.
Right,
Well, I'm just
Right.
curious on how it gets, you know, obviously these are for applicants that are going above the rules here and applying appropriately. But what's to say someone doesn't just go find a piece of ground and just build something and start doing something on it?
right,
And if they find an open piece of ground and sink a well in and they don't go through how do we,
yes,
how does that get, how do we find that before it becomes a problem? And I mean, obviously that's an illegal action.
right,
Part of it's working with the county in the permitting process to make sure that they're aware that in the MIDGSA, there's a permit necessary to move forward with the project before they start extracting groundwater.
yeah, and there are, failure to, if you look at H here, failure to obtain an intensive groundwater use permit.
Mhm.
So in the event somebody does that without a permit, they would be subject to the penalties
Water
under the
code.
water code, and the water code, penalties provide for both a per acre foot penalty along with a daily, penalty for being out of compliance, and the numbers are pretty steep, so.
Pretty much the guys I know, when somebody's building, we're gonna
Yeah.
hear about it.
Yeah, exactly, if somebody, I mean,
I'm just curious, this is all
Yeah.
above table
No,
type
exactly,
stuff
yeah.
for people who want to do it, but I just wonder,
no, exactly, we don't wanna incentivize people not to
Yeah.
follow the program and plan, but we also, I mean, we're not gonna know what's going on 130,000 acres at all time anyway, unless, you know, people either go through the proper permitting process with the county, which they should, or somebody calls them out,
yeah, we'll find out about it later.
exactly,
I think it's, you know, better preemptive than,
exactly,
you know, behind the eight ball here trying to figure out why someone said, well, you guys never said
right,
anything, so put
Or-
something in writing in here to say that we're aware that there is a possible future of
exactly,
someone who needs more than a little bit, and so here's the steps to go through, and then
right.
case by case initially, I guess, but.
Yeah, or on the, you know, cause on the other hand is, again, you know, these industries or whatever come into being in the MIDGSA, and then next thing you know, we're completely out of balance
Yeah.
as the MIDGSA. And
And
then
that
it's
puts-
You
all,
know, the thing is
That's
we
what
wouldn't
typically
even have thought of this 10 years ago
no,
Right.
absolutely not, yeah,
with Sigma. who
Yeah.
knows?
exactly. So we just need a way to be able to, just like the, you know, the county in some ways has done something similar as far as requiring groundwater balances for developments and projects and such. It's the same
Yeah.
concept. It's not saying you can't do it, but we just need to figure out what it means to us from a groundwater perspective.
Well, what do you think, Brian?
Yeah, it sounds like it's well written, and I don't have any adjustments, and
Do we need a motion to make a recommendation?
Just a recommendation.
Just a recommendation to the board? And we've perused this and gone over it, and we think it's a good thing, huh? Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay. Great, okay, so this will come before the board at the October board meeting. And then if it is approved, we will then communicate this to the county and such, so they know where.
It'll be the first one, but I won't be at that meeting, I'm gonna miss it, so you can, you know.
So you said you-
pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, yeah,
One of the easier ones.
yeah.
Okay, that takes care of, 3A, 3B, discussion on the coordination agreement.
So we just wanted to give the committee an update on the coordination agreement. We, actually had a really productive meeting a couple weeks ago with representatives from the 7 GSAs. So all 7 GSAs had some form of representation at the meeting. We went through a draft of the coordination agreement that had been circulated before. Melanie Aldridge had taken the task of drafting, a new version of the coordination agreement. And I think everybody was pretty pleased with, the result. There were a few, topics of discussion, and there's still a couple outstanding items that she's working on. and that people have given comments on. But just wanted to kind of give you guys an update, I think you guys saw a version a long time ago, so just some of the updates is, this is really just an agreement to coordinate, right? And so a lot of the language, or pretty much all the language about voting, things like that has been, or per the meeting minutes, and we'll see how everything comes out of the meeting notes, is gonna be struck, because there's really nothing to vote on. We're either coordinated or not coordinated. It's, you can't vote on how coordinated you are. So a lot of that's been removed, which I think actually kind of eases the process a lot, because a lot of times we get hung up on voting and such for these type of things. The other GSAs agreed, we have to have a point of contact, which essentially is a person or entity who has to submit all of the GSPs to the state. So we each can't individually submit our GSPs, we have to submit all of the GSPs together along with the coordination agreement, and it has to be through one point of contact. And all of the GSAs agreed to have David's Engineering be the point of contact, so that was a good accomplishment, we thought, to everybody come to agreement on that. We also have to have a coordinated data management system, so that's a data management system that's gonna be used going forward for all 7 GSAs, so we need it for the entire sub-basin. And we did get agreement from everybody that we were gonna have a coordinated data management system, so that was,
Who builds that?
so we actually, and you're gonna get an update on that in October also, at our October board meeting, but we actually, kind of put together an RFP. And so went out and we received 4 proposals, and I believe they're going to be interviewing 2 of the proposals.
Is there gonna be like some cloud-based system that?
And it can be structured all different ways, so that's what they're kind of trying to figure out.
Have other,
Yeah, so everybody has to do
Requirements
this.
that everybody's developing, but they're all kind of being created as we speak.
there's no template that everybody gets to just put their own data into?
Right, I mean, what's required within it, is a requirement
Yeah,
of the state, but how it's structured and set up and all that kind of stuff.
the template is the state's required
Description of
structure,
what-
how
Yeah.
what data contains, so that then it can be rolled right into their electronic system.
As the county was spearheading the RFP process and such, they also suggested, and we thought it was a good idea, because the Chichalissa Basin obviously needs the same setup, is to see if we can get the same consultants for both, and then there's some economies of scale,
For sure.
obviously.
Out of curiosity, they just sort of letting San Luis Delta Mendota just sort of go their own way, or?
The
I
Delta
mean,
Mendota Basin, sub-basin.
Delta Mendota, so.
Yeah, so the county's been, the county has, a small amount of acreage in the Delta Mendota sub-basin, and so they've been coordinating to some extent with the Delta Mendota sub-basin, and there's been different discussions back and forth related to minimum thresholds and measurable objectives and such, but yeah, I mean, they've been talking, but I don't know how involved the county is with that sub-basin, because obviously the acreage is very small compared to the others.
And it's a huge sub-basin of
Yeah.
with a number of agencies and members.
I think there's like 20-some or something in
Or
there.
even more, yeah, I think some even grouped together.
25,
Yeah,
20.
And they have a lot of different plans that they're all trying to.
Everybody's got a
Yeah.
different idea.
exactly, yeah.
If they can coordinate one like that, surely.
Yeah. you'd
Yeah,
think.
yeah. And then the other, thing that everybody agreed to was that we included an exhibit, within the coordination agreement that outlines all the water budgets for each GSA. So there are some discrepancies, from my understanding, between some of the GSPs and, in the water budgets, but they think that it can be worked out and that they're within a, a margin
So
of
they
error.
working
So-
with David's
yeah,
Engineering
so
on?
David's is working on that, and putting together that as an exhibit. We thought that would be a really good thing to go back and point to later on, because, this document essentially says we're coordinated on all of those things. So to have all of that information in one place as an exhibit would be helpful. So, so that was a lot, we felt like it was a lot of really good progress
A
that was made.
lot of things to agree on in one meeting.
How long did the meeting
Basically,
last?
got there very quickly.
Couple hours, I would say. The only real outstanding topic, at least, and Tommy, correct me if you had a different thought on this.
Just the one.
There's one outstanding, topic that Newstone had called out, and it related to, the termination of the agreement. and that, right now it's drafted that there should be a 30-day written notice. If a party wants to withdraw from the agreement, if one of the GSAs wants to withdraw from the coordination agreement, there should be a 30-day written notice, which is pretty standard. And in fact, one of the attorneys, from one of the other GSAs said in some of the other sub-basins she's working in, it's a year's notice. So 30 days notice seems fair. It's not saying you can't withdraw, it's just saying, 30
How
days
does the
notice.
withdrawal
Well,
affect the rest of the members?
Yeah, so that
That's
was,
exactly the point, right?
yeah,
I
so
mean,
that,
it's okay to withdraw unless you're like dodging a bullet or something.
well, it would put us in probation, in a probationary
Yeah, I don't
status.
think there needs,
So they actually, stated that they didn't want a 30-day notice. They
Took a
wanted
really strong stance on that, said they need to be able to withdraw it. anytime.
immediately.
oh,
And,
Just didn't put it in writing, you're with,
I would call for a 3
Well,
month or something.
yeah, well, then all the other 6 GSAs said, we can't operate like that. We're public agencies, we have to have meetings, we've got to figure out how we notify the state. I mean, there's a lot of things that would go into.
Well, not only that, but
withdrawal of the
if
agency.
if you can, then there really
Where's
isn't.
the commitment?
There's no.
well, there's no commitment, but as a public agency, 30 days is a really short timeline to pull together, schedule a meeting, get a notice, get it on there, get a, maybe
Figure
there's a
out how-
committee meeting
yeah.
that needs to occur before the board meeting. All those things have to happen in 30 days, it's really quick.
Yeah, even
So-
30 days is, right, it's very short, so.
If
with
someone
no
wants to
notice-
be able to leave immediately, it does throw into question the trust factor.
Yeah, and even at 30 days is.
Very
so
short. It would be-
Nobody else is okay with 30
No other
days?
party agreed that
Yeah.
an immediate written notification is enough. 30 days
Yeah.
is even too short in a lot of
Yeah.
plans.
So there was a lot of discussion on that, all the other 6 GSAs, the 6 GSAs besides the one, were all in agreement that we need some kind of noticing, we have to, there's a lot of things that would go into this. But the one GSA did take a pretty strong stance on that and said, well, that might be, the reason we can't, so we said, well, go back and talk to your
Yeah,
people.
just you have to at least have the ability to have a discussion with that withdrawing party.
Right,
To
figure out
let them
what,
know what the implications are of doing that and what the impacts to the other agencies are. Try to resolve the differences before it's just, oh, we're done. Now, all the other agencies are impacted, we're all put in probationary and at risk of the state coming in and take over.
Yeah.
So that's,
Well, once again, I would say that a month is kind of a short notice.
well, exactly, we
Absolutely.
agree too,
I
so,
mean,
yeah.
we're in it for the long haul here,
yeah,
yeah.
and I'd hate to think that something's gonna come in between our coordination and our operations
Right.
together,
right,
that's gonna make one or another
In
party.
one evening,
Yeah.
you have a meeting, then you're out. It just,
I don't wanna force anybody into something, but a reasonable time to withdraw,
exactly.
is just reasonable. It's
Exactly,
not,
exactly, so we said we would discuss it with you guys, but like I said, the other 5 besides MID, 6 of us total were in agreement, we need some kind of noticing provision in there, we need some kind of noticing timeframe.
And everybody else
Okay.
got the month. Everybody else.
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
a lot better than
Yeah, well-
immediate, so, yeah,
Dave, you,
Yeah.
I mean. if-
I agree with you, if I had my way, it'd be a minimum 90 days.
yeah,
And that way there's time for meetings,
There's a lot
discourse,
happens.
there's a lot of things you could do.
Yeah.
A lot of discussion.
And,
resolve the issues and keep it, on track.
yeah.
I mean, if it was me, it would be 90 days, but surely, 30 days is, if
minimum.
they're willing to
Yeah.
blow up the coordination agreement because they can't immediately leave,
Might as well get out now before you.
Well,
Yeah.
exactly. So the question really on the table was, would an immediate withdrawal be acceptable to
No.
MID? And
I don't think
Yeah.
I think we're gonna,
Sure.
okay. Staff agrees.
Yeah, we stood pretty strong on that.
Yeah.
Do you guys with it?
Yeah, so that's really was, I think, the one, I mean, there were a couple other minor things in here.
you know why they, would request something like that? Is there something, is it homeowners or something, is it?
No,
There
no,
wasn't a
it's,
clear explanation other than their client wanted the ability to at any time walk away from the deal.
There isn't like a future
No.
issue, like we're gonna change what we're doing, and so we're gonna be applied in a different way, and, cause even 1 month, I mean, you say, well, if you knew that far ahead, it's no big deal, but that immediate
Yeah.
yeah.
doesn't seem.
No, I mean, your guess, there wasn't a real explanation besides that's what they wanted. So we'll see, but I did wanna bring that to your attention because that is the one, I would say, major outstanding
That's the one.
item with the coordination agreement. But besides that, Melanie was gonna take it back and incorporate, what we had talked about at the meeting, and then people had some other just like drafting type edits and such, and should be getting that back to us shortly.
So if that's gonna come back theoretically the first part of October now, or?
No, well, so the coordination agreement probably won't be in front of our board for official approval until the December board meeting. So the December board meeting is right now where it's planned for the GSP, because we still have to collect all the comments from the GSP, incorporate those comments and such. And so the December board meeting will be where we do the GSP approval process and the coordination.
So what you're looking at is for December, voting on the overall GSP
Correct.
of the 4 entities,
Correct,
voting to approve the coordination agreement,
correct.
and gathering it all up, sending it to the state by the 1st of the year,
By the end of January.
by the end of January.
Yes, yeah, but all the agencies, I think, are now coordinated on their dates for approvals and such. So, yeah, so that's kind of where we're at with things, and that's what the timeline and schedule looks like. So we'll see, if we get some other draft versions of the coordination agreement in there. You know, there's some other language in there that we weren't anticipating, or, if this noticing becomes a real sticking point, then we'll probably either be calling another committee meeting or be in front of the board, so.
It
I'll
would
keep
be
you guys posted on that.
unfortunate of all the things
Right.
that hung up on,
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah.
But, I mean, hope not, I hope the client will give them that, but they're pretty adamant that it couldn't be more media done.
And again, I don't even know how you do that as a public agency,
No.
because it would have to be done at a public meeting, I mean, you gotta notice the meeting, you know, there's a lot of things that have to go into it, so.
Well, let's see what happens.
Yep.
And if they don't agree, then essentially the other 6 entities are gonna have to move forward. I mean, what else are you gonna
Well, we'll
do?
have to talk.
We're gonna have to figure that out, because supposedly everything has to be submitted together, so.
If we don't have their agreement on the coordination, then it's not complete. They won't be a signatory to it, it won't be complete, we won't have a coordination agreement.
Then essentially they're inviting the state in.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okey dokey.
Yep, so those are all of the discussion
Right,
items we
right
have for
before
you
you
guys.
even cross the rib, before you break the ribbon,
Yep, exactly, yep.
and you get your.
Save that ribbon for the next one.
Okay, anything else?
That's it.
Brian?
Nothing for me.
Great, well, thank you guys, appreciate your time.